ceaseless tourism, quest for pleasure and distraction, inner peace denied, evolutive progress hindered, environment destroyed, by Catherine Mossman, Tiny, on a November 15, 2023.
Cruise ship docked in Lisbon courtesy of Pixabay. On July 27, 2023, a Figu friend on Facebook posted comments about the heavy wake tourists leave in his homeland of
Portugal. I live 25 kilometers from Lisbon center. I haven't been there for a couple of years now, at least not in the summer. So today, I had some paperwork to take care of, and I decided to use public transport. Lisbon smells bad, construction everywhere, hordes of tourists that shove, pull, push, and make a racket. I don't understand. The Brits don't make a peep in their country. They come south and completely lose their minds. Like where I live in Sintra. Also, Lisbon is a beautiful city with amazing scenery, but it's turned to hour percentual. The people are horrible. The ambience is atrocious. Too many people and too much traffic for such a small city. Even in Porto, residents are now complaining about tourists, the noise they make, and trash they leave behind. How can we fight overpopulation if 99% of the West has lost their minds? Most of the tourists are from the US and north of Europe. These people alone are causing havoc and chaos. You can feel it on your gut, the greed, the self-indulgence, the envy, the arrogance, the depression. It's heavy in the air everywhere.
Posted with permission of L. Demings.
Place du Commerce, Lisbon Pixabay. Lisbon Streetscape Pixabay.
Luis's post about the negative impact tourism is having in his homeland was the impetus for the following reflections. It seems that tourism and out-of-control indulgences to do with various materialistic pursuits, whether they are for pleasure, fame, or notoriety, serve as a great prize for many humans. As Billy predicted in his 1958 article, Prophecy and Prediction, Sentence 71,
the already near future will result in that every human being will try to achieve as much enjoyment, possessions, pleasure, money, and wealth as he or she can.
Touristic traveling, aka leisure travel, surely encapsulates this sentiment. In addition, the lack of consideration for the catastrophe of the amount of fossil fuel burned and the resulting pollutants deposited into the atmosphere, as planes, cruise ships, trains, buses, and cars full of sightseeing humans crisscross the planet in their rush to idle away their time in distant regions, belies the degree to which humans care about the collective consequences of their actions. Not only the traveling to and fro, but the wanton cavalier behaviors that issue forth often destroy the peace and quiet of the places they intrude upon, and leave a wake of garbage and effluent behind. Bucket list obsessions. And the need to fill some bucket list, which presumes the erroneous assumption that one only lives once and hence needs to mash in as much as possible, inevitably includes traveling to and having experiences in all of the dreamed of locations. Get the selfies to prove it, and to hell with the negative social, economic, and environmental consequences their actions wreak. Never mind the personal evolutive hindering of our own consciousness in the ignorance of the creational laws and what it means to be truly human. In Billy's book, The Way to Live 2, page 2728, the juxtaposition of pushing crowds of inwardly idle people is quite apropos.
Quite inevitably, such a human being must try to throttle his or her deadly inner boredom in the pushing crowd of idle people, whereby they lose all self-esteem and confidence in themselves. Thus, they totally forget to look at themselves and see themselves as they really are. They become a stranger to themselves, which causes them to fall into bad embarrassment when, through some circumstances or other, they find themselves suddenly vis-à-vis de soi-même. Therefore, when they are suddenly confronted with themselves.
Ganz zwangsläufig muss ein solcher Mensch im schiebenden Gedränge müßiger Leute seine tödliche innere Langweile zu erwürgen versuchen, wodurch er alle Selbstachtung verliert und das Zutrauen zu sich selbst. So verlernt er völlig, sich selbst zu betrachten und sich so zu sehen, wie er tatsächlich ist. Er wird ein Fremder zu sich selbst, wodurch er in böse Verlegenheit verfällt. Wenn er sich durch irgendwelche Umstände plötzlich einmal vis-à-vis de soi-même befindet, wenn er also sich plötzlich einmal sich selbst gegenübergestellt sieht.
Whether the destination is a resort or historic, most are overrun by tourists. The historic sites of Machu Picchu in Peru and the Giza pyramids in Egypt and in all of Europe are swarmed daily with busloads of humans. Venice is fighting to keep behemoth cruise ships from docking at its ports, damaging its structural underpinnings and flooding its streets and waterways with tourists. We've also all seen the disturbing pictures of the lines of tourist hikers, mountain climbers, who crowd and litter the paths up Mount Everest. It's been stated that some climb over bodies, some dead, in order to clamber to the top and take selfies that they will then post on social media, breathless for attention, fame, notoriety. On an aside, tourism is often touted as a great industry, bringing much-needed tourist dollars to the local economies. But at what cost? As Billy and Pata discuss in the following contact report, 3693 on November 12, 2004, it is mostly the big businesses that gain from the tourism industry, while, as in the case of my friend Luis's beloved Portugal and all the other tourist destinations such as those just referred to, the sheer overwhelming numbers of tourists who crowd the streets, plazas, monuments, historical sites, disrupt the quiet enjoyment any denizen should be entitled to in their own regions. Also, as Billy points out, many do not consider the other ramifications such as economic refugees, asylum seekers, spread of disease, and spread of crime in the homelands of the visitors as a result.
When I think about how tourists from all over the world have performed and shown their wealth in all the countries where I have lived, I have to say that it is absolutely not surprising that asylum seekers from all these countries come to Switzerland and elsewhere in Europe. They all think that milk and honey flow here, and that there is a life of glory and joy. The tourists, with their affluence and money spending, really encourage people in the so-called poor holiday countries and third world countries to leave their homes as economic refugees with completely mistaken ideas about the prosperity to be expected and to migrate to the industrialized countries. But nobody is talking about that, not even the governments who still support and promote tourism, together with the profit-oriented travel companies which rake in millions and billions. No one is talking about it, and no one wants to believe that global mass tourism is increasingly promoting the problem of asylum seekers, the spread of disease and the spread of crime from poorer countries to the wealthy industrialized states. All of this, in addition to the fact that the cultures of foreign countries are changed and destroyed by this irrational tourism, as I myself was able to observe in all those countries where I lived and worked. All these things are not taken into consideration by anyone, and consequently, nothing is done about it, which makes everything more and more out of control.
There is also the erroneous view that tourism in foreign countries brings profitable growth, earnings, and prosperity for their people. But this is not true, because poverty persists among the population in all countries because in reality, it is only a few from the population and above all, the big business people who earn a lot from tourism. And of these big business people, it is often those who come from rich industrial countries and make enormous profits with hotels and sports facilities, etc., in the poor countries. The Pleiaren had the same problems in their distant past. Pa continues, in very early times, Our ancestors acted in the same wise, creating the same problems as you have called them, and as they have existed on the earth for many years, since the populations of the rich industrialized countries have large financial resources that allow them to flood foreign countries with tourists. But nobody cares about the fact that all these problems, as you called them, occur. Then there is also disaster tourism, which is difficult to fathom that it is even a thing. Also equally appalling is sex tourism.
It seems that humanity's thirst for excitement and feeding off the misery of others knows no bounds. From Contact Report 370 on December 31, 2004, after the terrible tsunami on DC-26 in Southeast Asia, Ptah is speaking.
For many business-making locals and foreigners, as well as for many tourists, the initial shock was over after only 2 days, because the businessmen are already diligently doing everything they can to promote tourism again. This, while the tourists, completely indifferent, inhuman and inhumane, as well as unscrupulous towards all the hardship and all the misery of those affected, are already spreading again in the destroyed tourist places and on the beaches and behaving as if the world belongs to them alone. In addition to this, those who are irresponsible in various countries engage in disgraceful disaster tourism, whereby these kinds of tourists feast on the hardship and misery of those affected by the disaster and record everything without decency on films and photos, in order to then brag about it back home with their family and acquaintances and friends, etc. It is also a fact that good business is already being done with tourism again. However, it is not that the population of the country benefits from it, but only the governments and those who are directly involved in tourism and earn their money with it. Relatively speaking, however, this is only a very small percentage of the total population, so that only this small part of the population benefits from tourism and leads a better or good life, while the majority of the population continues to live in poverty or has to make a more or less bad living.
Tourism is just one symptom of the larger issue of humanity's lack of curiosity about the purpose of life. Instead of seeking for inner peace, the masses of those who come from wealthy nations seek distraction, relaxation, inactivity, entertainment, and external inputs that often require that other humans are either used and/or ignored. The ceaseless and restless seeking of distraction and diversion in order to stay outwardly focused ensures that we remain alienated from the quiet inner voice that urges us to turn to paths that are more consonant with our true inner selves, through which we will find an inner freedom that assuages our frenzy to be engaged either in relentless and pointless activities or equally pointless lack of effort. For example, lolling for countless days on the beach at a resort. Our inner selves seek to be one with the creational ways and means which requires effort and a sense of duty in order to further our consciousness-based evolution. However, if we continue to suppress this quiet voice, we waste precious time on purposeless pursuits that often impact our fellow humans in a negative wise, of one sort or another. Recently, I came across a great quote in Billy's book, The Way to Live, on pages 95-96, where Billy calls this stealing time from their own and others' lives.
And then 44. Many human beings are genial and jovial, even high-spirited, when they are unoccupied, inactive, and without thought, when they can just live for the day and parasitically let their fellow human beings execute the duties for the maintenance of life. And they do not care about truth and knowledge, nor about education and work and deference, decency and respect for the life and the fellow human beings, as well as for the creational natural laws and recommendations and